We're going to talk about the 3 hidden habits that is keeping your team dependent on you. Now, this is a topic that comes up a lot with the women that I speak with, as well as my clients inside the Leadership Accelerator around, especially because if you're stuck in them, as one of my clients said yesterday, I'm stuck in the minutia. I'm doing all of the little operational sides of things, and I do not have the time to work on the policies and the strategic work that I need to do as part of my role. So if that is you, and you've got a team you're managing, big or small. So I've worked with women that have had only one team member and have had this come up. And I've also been working with women that have had 20 plus with multiple layers inside their team that has also experienced this issue of being stuck in the weeds in the operations and doing the day-to-day. So if that is you, then stay here with me, because I want to share 3 habits you may not even be aware of that you're doing that is causing your team to continuously being dependent on you. Now, if you want the first step, I'm going to give you the teaser right away. Then one of the best resources that I have, and it's a free resource for you, is my accountability activation guide. I should have had some more coffee this morning. But my accountability activation guide is going to help you with proven strategies that, for one of my clients at least, and she had over 20 plus people in her team, got back 20 plus hours of her time each and every week within 4 months working together. If you want to get access to that, just comment the word guide and I will send that over to you. And if this is the first time you're joining me, hi, I'm Kim, and I am a leadership strategist and executive advisor. Have been for 5 years for women in leadership who want to get recognized, promoted, and lead independent and accountable teams. All right, so let's dive into those 3 habits right now, because we don't have time to mess around with this. I want to make sure that you can identify them. And then again, the guide is going to help you with figuring out what the next step is. So the first habit, and this seems really super helpful, is answering their questions. Now, I'm going to make a caveat here. There are going to be questions that you definitely need to answer. Maybe this is a question around a specific budget. Maybe there's a question around an actual decision that needs to be made where you are the only one that is authorized to make that decision. So that's fine. But most often, 80% of the questions that you get asked from your team members are likely questions that it's just like, hey, you know what? It's easier if I ask her, because you know what? It just takes, I'd have to spend some time figuring it out. As another client I've mentioned, she's like, I'm the Google machine of my team. So they don't spend time looking up the answer. They don't spend time going back into the emails or going back through the procedures so that they know what they're supposed to do. No, they just come to me because I'm always the one giving the answer. So if you're always answering their questions, even a simple question of hey, what do I need to do next? Guess what? You're training them, unintentionally, of course, to be very dependent on you, and to make sure that that they always have to that they keep coming back to you for the answer, which means oh, well, that's how you're going to get stuck losing quite a bit of your time throughout the day. So what can you do instead? What you do instead is start moving into coaching. So stop answering all the questions. Of course, there are going to be, like I said at the beginning, there will be questions that you do need to answer because you might only have the knowledge or you're the only one authorized to make that decision. Fine. But the majority of questions are not that. The majority of questions are about moving the process forward, about next steps, about solving a problem. Great. But if they haven't taken the time to identify ways of solving the problem, what their next steps are, they don't have any recommendations, then this isn't the time to go into answering those questions. It's time to go into coaching. Because I know I've had lots of conversations inside of my DMs with women. Like, well, you can't just delegate, especially if it's a junior team member. We don't want to just delegate to them. They don't might not know what they're doing. Great. Fair point. And yes, you can. Because rather than answering the questions, you can start coaching them into okay, so what do you think the next steps are? Where do you think you could find the information? Who do you need to talk to get to that next step? Right? So it's asking questions. And if they're not going to get there on their own, I'm going to say eventually, sure, give them an answer. But when you start off just constantly giving the answer, you are going to stay as their Google machine because they know, oh, if I just walk into Kim's office, I'm going to ask her and it's just going to be like 2 minutes of my time, but it's going to save me like a half an hour of doing this myself. We as individuals overall, not everybody, but are generally lazy. We want the easiest route to the answer. So why not? Why would we change? Why would your team change if you're always the one that's going to continuously give the answer? Because they don't have it. There's no obstacle. There's no pain in it for them to change their behavior because, hey, you just keep popping up with the answers every time. So that's the first habit. The second habit is your open door policy. Now, this might sound like, oh, we just talked about answer questions. This has to do with the access to you. So when your open door policy looks like they can walk in whenever they want, asking questions, just dumping things on your desk, or maybe they're just like, hey, you know what, this report's due. I finished it off. Like, can you just proofread it and then like let me know if anything needs to be changed? That access to you, whether it's in all throughout the day, whether it's in the evenings, on your holidays, that again is leading to your team being very dependent on you. One of the women that I worked with last month, she was sharing, she's like, I had a team member who was contacting me on my vacation, and I was answering questions and finally just said like, hey, listen, like put in the boundary of like, I'm on holidays, like we will pick this up as soon as I'm back. Guess what? Nothing happened while she was gone. The world did not end. The building did not burn down. And she could have a better conversation with her team member when she returned rather than trying to manage this on her time off. So if your access to you is constant and everywhere and all the time, and I've worked with these types of leaders too. I remember having a leader who went on holidays and I was like, listen, I've got it. Like I can figure all this out, but still wanted it, like updates every single day, all day. Why? Is it because you're afraid that something is going to go wrong? And it has, so the question could be, is much more reflecting back onto yourself. Like, hey, what is going to happen? Am I not enough if I'm not constantly available? And I know as women leaders, we have to, unfortunately, there's still the old adage and the bias where we have to work twice as hard to get noticed, even half as much, et cetera, et cetera. And it doesn't mean that we need to continue in that vein by continuously training our teams. Hey, you can depend on me, whether I'm on holidays, whether I'm at home, whether I'm at the sports with my children, I'm always here. Just send me an email, send me a message, phone me, please, because then I can answer your question really quickly. All of that access is draining your time, and it is also taking you away from being able to spend that time on the strategic and those policy items that your role entails. So that is habit number 2. Habit number 3 is expecting that they know what it is that their job entails. Now, you might think like, people have their job descriptions. So here's what happened with one of my clients, and she had one person in her team. And as we were talking about this, she was preparing for a feedback session of like the performance review, right? Things were not going really well, wasn't meeting the expectations, wasn't delivering on their outcomes, which all can happen in a team, even in a team of one. And when I asked, I said, okay, so what is the outcome that you want out of this conversation? Her response was very simple, very logical, makes a lot of sense. I just want her to do her job. Great. What does that mean? And with this second question, she was stumped. She's like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean about doing our job? I said, well, if you can't answer to me very concisely, very specifically and directly as to what your expectations are and what are the expected outcomes that need to be delivered for this role, how do you expect that your team member knows what it is they need to do? So the expectation, and yes, especially most women leaders, probably 99% of them that I work with are all very high achieving, high performing women. So you have already always over delivered on your performance in your roles. there's never not really been a question of like, what is expected in my role? Like, I've got my job description, I had these conversations with my bosses, so I know what's going on. So you inherently may think that everybody has that same thought process. Unfortunately, no. There are going to be times that or actually, I would say a lot of times, where you need to be much more explicit and much more specific in what are your expectations, what are the expected outcomes, and really having that conversation with each and every one of your team members so that that clarity allows them to start taking action. Because without it, it is also leading to them being very dependent on you, asking questions again, coming in whenever they've got something coming up, when there's a problem, when there's a crisis, they don't know how to solve it themselves, or they don't even want to try because they're not clear on what the expectations are for what they need to be doing and what they're responsible for from you. So again, those are 3 hidden habits. 1 is you're answering their questions rather than coaching them. Number 2, your open door policy with all of that access is only reinforcing the fact that they don't need to take responsibility because you're there to catch all the mistakes and catch it all whenever something goes wrong. And number 3, that is you expect them to already know what it is they're responsible for and what their expected outcome should be. Now, if you're doing one of those 3 habits, it's okay. Because let's be honest, oftentimes when we're promoted into roles, there isn't a lot of training on how to be a manager. There's not a lot of training on team performance. Yes, there's lots of theory out there. There's lots of information. We can Google it. We can read all kinds of books. But sometimes all that knowledge doesn't filter down into actual action and proven strategies. So if you're looking for that, when you're ready to have that, then the first step, and a first really great step, is my free accountability activation guide. So just comment the word guide, comment below, or wherever, whichever platform you're watching this, or send me a DM and I will send that guide over to you. And if you're ready to go like, okay, let's just skip the guide because I want to know what it's like and how do I incorporate this and implement this specifically for my team, in my circumstance, in my situation, in my organization, then comment VIP and we'll have a conversation as to what that looks like. And you're going to be talking directly with me, not anyone else on my team. All right. So those are your 2 options for your next steps. Grab the accountability activation guide, comment guide, or have a conversation with me and comment the word VIP, and I will look with you personally to create a personalized strategy as to what this looks like to implement this for your team in the future. All right. Thank you so very much. If you've got any other questions, please drop them in the comments below because I love to answer questions, or DM me with your comments.